Hey everyone, welcome back. And today's video is all about mastering Timbersaw by studying how the pros, especially players like ATF, play him in the current Dota 2 meta and patch 7.39c. If you're in Herald, Guardian or even Ancient, this video will walk you through what the best Timbersaw players do at every phase of the game. You'll learn not just what items to buy or what spells to level, but also how to think like a Timbersaw player. The gameplay footage comes from full matches, so everything you see will be natural, no stage clips or perfect games. We want this to feel like something you can actually apply in your next ranked match. So let's begin with the laning phase. This is where a lot of newer Timbersaw players mess up. The first thing is to understand that you're not playing to get kills. You're playing to survive secure levels and slowly become unkillable. This is something to apply to, I can say, majority of offlanes right now, is that generally you want to play to your level advantage. So level 1, level 2, level 2 onwards is when you kind of hit a peak timing. So you generally want to make moves only when you've hit those levels. Pro players typically start with items like Ring of Protection if they need armor, two branches, Tango, and a magic stick. You can also replace a Ring of Protection with 2 Gauntlets of Strength if you need to prioritize some strength instead of armor. This gives you sustained survivability in aggressive lanes at level 1. There is a majority of cases nowadays where people are going reactive armor level 1 instead of getting your Q. I think if you have a support that can contribute to securing the range creep, then you don't really need to go your Q or your W at level 1, and instead you can just go with reactive armor to have more sustain, and you don't have to burn so much of your money on your resources on tangos. So yeah, at level 2, most of the time, if you have added your reactive armor at level 1, or you've added even your Q at level 2, so at level 1, at level 2 you'll definitely be adding Timber Chains, because this ability helps you reposition, escape from harass. It also allows you to go in to get kills or to go in and dish out damage. So if, let's say, you don't have your reactive armor at level 1, means you have your Q and your W at level 2, you should be able to fly in and combo them down. At least you'll be able to get a good amount of harass in. Then at level 3, this is technically the biggest spike in your early game levels. So now you would either have 2 into your Whirling Death, or you would have 1-1-1. Level 3 you're definitely going to be adding into Whirling Death if you added reactive armor at level 1, and then level 2 Timber Chain, and then level 3 would be Whirling Death. But yeah, so what happens here is that you can either combo up with your position 4 if he also has some ability that can have you fly the opponent, and then now you try to fly the person and you either get a lot of harass in or can lead up to some kill potential. But if not, then you're playing for even more levels, which you then can start walking at the enemy when you have more stacks into your reactive armor, or basically that they're just low, from all the harass that you've been doing. So this itself creates a lot of pressure and forces them to waste spells or rotate. When you are tanky and you're just running at them, they wouldn't want to just stay there and tank it up, Okay, so the next thing is that if you watch pro replays, you'll notice that they rarely let the wave push into their tower unless it's intentional. So usually they'll be dragging the creep waves in front of their tower, or like they will cut waves behind the tier 1 and force awkward pulls. So these small habits tend to help them win their lanes over time. And remember, if you're constantly at low HP, don't be afraid to play back. Timbersaw becomes stronger with levels, not necessarily with gold early on, but your real lane dominance begins once Soul Ring is online. And another thing just to note is that don't let yourself be constantly at low HP. So I think that's one of the first things that you need to figure out how to fix. Basically, if you're constantly at low HP, you're not going to be able to play the lane. So you got to make sure that you pool regen, either a salve or tangos early on when you feel like you're already taking a tad bit amount of damage and you don't really have heals. Or the other thing would be, because you're a melee hero, right? So go nearer to the creeps only when there is a last hit potential on the creep. If not, just play the distance early on. Just play the distance. Okay, So once you hit level 6 and you get Chakram, the game kind of changes. Okay, at this stage you should already have Soul Ring and be working towards Arcane Boots. This gives you the mana to spam your entire toolkit. So what pros do in this phase? The answer is they pressure and they farm. Hitting level 6 isn't the end of your farming game as an offlane. Okay, you still need a lot more items. At the end of the day, you are a core. So you do still need to hit a significant amount of creeps throughout the game. And okay, but to break it down perfectly, they usually look to shove their lane quickly and then disappear into the jungle. So they don't just sit in the offlane farming creeps passively. Instead, they use Timber's mobility to force reactions, soak up rotations, and create space. In many ATF replays, you'll see him aggressively cutting waves between tier 1 and tier 2, chaining through the trees to reset the aggro and only retreating if multiple heroes TP in. And mind you, this is important. So you forcing rotations into your lane and staying alive at the same time is a big amount of space for your team. Okay, it opens up the map towards the bottom side of the map a lot, because now it's just a number game. You know, at the end of the day, there's just not enough heroes in the other side of the map to put up the same amount of presence and pressure. Okay, the next thing to note is that this is actually pretty important. They don't dive blindly. There is a lot of map awareness. Okay, so if the enemy mid is missing and or your support is dead, you don't want to go farming the enemy triangle or farming deep into the enemy lines where it's very easy for them to jump you and your team not to be able to react. Because at the end of the day, right, Dota is all a reactionary game. If you can force something and your team is already ready to react first, generally you'll have the upper hand and you might come out on top of whatever engagement you're going to take at that particular moment. So yeah, the next piece of advice would be instead just cut one way, farm a nearby jungle camp and reposition. Stay near your team's strongest core, so you're always ready to turn skirmishes with Chakram and Timber Chain. So also, many lower ranked players miss the importance of using Timber's presence to cover weak teammates. Okay, this whole sentence that I just mentioned, right? It's a bit harder to digest, and I think this depends on the situation. So early parts of the game, when you're a Timbersaw and you're an offlane or whatever, and like farm priority is actually on you. So you don't want to just go blindly leaving whatever farm you have and just making some stupid rotation that ends up with you just dying a couple of times and maybe saving your safe lane, but that means you are sacrificing yourself to push him ahead, which he's not really going to be pulling himself back from the depth that he's in, but instead like he may be catching up a little bit, but you are significantly being pushed back. In other ways of thinking about it, you basically have to do it this way. You make a rotation that's smart. So you don't rotate unless like they're diving your towers, or it's something where basically like right now if you were to jump in, your whole team will come out on top, and including you. You have to include yourself. It is a selfish game at the end of the day. You do the right things at the right time, so it doesn't look like it's actually very selfish. But you have to learn how to prioritize yourself and when your hero needs to be farming as well. So yeah, other good thing is to note is that at that point you're not the easiest hero to kill, so you are hard to kill and your presence alone does push enemies away. But just remember, if you TP in just for your presence and you were to push the enemies away or whatnot and make the safe lane a little bit more safer, you're getting nothing out of it other than the fact that you just bought space for your carry. And think about it this way, if you're already there and now somebody else comes there, you're not going to split farm. The person who's there first is going to be prioritized in getting the farm there. So basically it becomes just a waste of time. But there are things that you can do to still get back to your lane, so that you can get back to your lane, or you can just you're a Timbersaw, you can Timber Chain too all the way back to top, but it's not as significant. The best would be to just take the gate. So yeah, that's something you could do. But at the end of the day, just make sure the rotation was something a little bit more clean, and make sure that you think like, okay, now they're diving my tower. If I TP in, guarantee I don't need to go out too far to reach this fight. I can get something out of it. So then yes, then make that TP. If not, safe lane's gotta die, I guess, sometimes. Okay, so now the mid game. Okay, the mid game is where Timbersaw starts to feel truly oppressive. Ideally, by this point, you have Soul Ring, Arcane Boots, and Kaya. So these three items form the foundation of your spell spam and survivability. Okay, what do I mean by spell spam here is the time to rapidly boost your farm is here, okay? That's what I mean by spell spam. So one pattern you'll often see is that the pros usually end up pushing into enemy jungles and taking their safe farm away from them, from their opponents. So this goal isn't to get kills, it's to prevent enemies from farming safely, force the enemies to respond, and then either disengage or take the fight on your terms. So if your team wants to smoke, you lead it. If you basically tank spells, you reveal vision, let your carry and support sit behind. So the other thing would be when pushing towers, don't dive, okay? Stand just outside of tower range, let Chakram zone supports, and don't give the enemy a free way to start the fight. But if they do engage, your survivability buys your team precious seconds to arrive. And another important thing to note is to always try to track enemy disabled, so Timbersaw becomes nearly unkillable once the enemy stuns are baited. If you see a lion or shadow shaman use hex on someone else, then it's go time. As the game hits 30 minutes, you become this massive tank. You're basically a living obstacle. So Aghanim Scepter becomes a key pickup here, giving you the survivability you need so that you don't get blown up instantly unless there's a purge. Then you need BKB. The other common pickups are like Lotus Orb, Shiva's Guard, Yules, or even Eternal Shroud depending on the enemy draft. You need to adapt. Your job now is to control space in fights. Spam double chakram at choke points, chain through enemies to force repositioning. If they try to kite you, good. More time wasted while your cores are there to deal damage. During base sieges, don't go for kills unless they are obvious. And what I mean by this, just don't start massively trying to dive way past all the towers or the Rexes, and don't force things that don't need to be done. Instead, position to absorb attention. Force 3 or more enemies, heroes to throw spells on you while your carry hits towers or pick off stragglers. And don't forget wave clear. In late game, single chakram plus timber chain combo can wipe a creep wave and delay high ground pushes. You can, if you learn how to use these moments, you can actually force a lot of resets where you don't have to burn your buyouts to defend high ground. Okay, so now what can you learn from ATF or the other top Timbersaw players that actually make sense in your 2K MMR pubs? First and foremost, they rarely waste spells, okay? So every Timber Chain, every Whirling Death, every Chakram, all with intention. If they cast Chakram, it's to zone, or it's to finish a kill, or to clear a wave efficiently. They don't randomly toss spells just because they are off cooldown. At lower ranks, many players spam their buttons with no regard for positioning or mana. But the pros conserve their resources and use them to maintain lane control or turn a fight, not just poke. Okay, second, they are extremely map aware. You'll notice pro Timber players always looking at the minimap, so they know who's showing on the minimap and who's missing. If the enemy mid or spot goes missing, they pull back. If the enemy carry rotates, they are already repositioned. They don't overstay their welcome. Even when they are strong, they don't push their luck without backup or vision. This kind of discipline keeps them alive longer, lets them control tempo, and forces enemies to waste time looking for them. And now the third one would be to track important enemy cooldowns. A good Timbersaw doesn't dive into a fight unless the enemy key disables are already used. Think Hex, Silences, or Stuns from heroes like Lion, Silences, Shadow Shaman. Once those spells are down, it's Timber time. He chains in, drops Chakram, and starts dismantling the enemy frontline. At lower brackets, many players dive headfirst into a full 5-man lineup without considering what spells are available. If you're in lower brackets, internalizing just these 3 habits will immediately make you a better Timbersaw player. You'll survive longer, make fewer unnecessary plays, and waste less time. Most losses in these brackets don't happen because your hero is bad. They happen because of poor map awareness and unnecessary aggression. Okay, let's be real. Timbersaw can feel super powerful, but only if you're not sabotaging yourself. These are the common mistakes players make when they try to learn Timber. First and foremost, diving towers before level 6. Don't do it. Before Chakram, your kill threat is extremely limited and your escape options are weaker. Most early dives end in unnecessary deaths. Play safe, get your levels, and then turn aggressive once you hit your first spike. The next one would be ignoring your item timings. No soul ring, no arcane boots, then don't expect to have impact. Timbersaw is completely reliant on mana to spam his abilities. Skipping core regen items means you'll run out of gas in the middle of a fight or wave cut and then die for it. And now the third one would be wasting Timber Chain aggressively with no escape path. This one's one of the biggest killers. Chaining forward into fog or under a tower when you have no vision or backup is just asking to be disabled and deleted. You always want to make sure there's a tree behind you or a route to safety before committing forward. The fourth one would be playing too far away from your team when you're behind. Timbersaw can be hard to kill but not immortal. If you're already behind and start farming the enemy triangle alone, you're just giving away more gold. Stick with your team and tank for them and buy items for your cause. The last one would be forgetting to rotate and scale. So a lot of low rank Timbersaw players win the lane and then do nothing. They keep farming the same jungle camp for 10 minutes. Basically, by now you should have actually just rotated and applied pressure once you're around level 6 to 8. You gotta cut waves, show up to tower defenses, force reactions. If you're farming passively, you'll fall off. Timbersaw isn't an unkillable god. He feels tanky, but only if you play him smart. Good positioning, map awareness, and item timings are everything. If you throw those away, no amount of armor stacks will save you. That's a wrap up for this analysis on how the pros are playing Timbersaw. If you found this helpful, drop a like and let us know which hero you want us to cover next. And just a heads up, I will definitely cover the hero that whoever mentions in the comment for this video in the next one. So subscribe if you want more breakdowns like this, videos that turn confusing pro games into guides you can actually follow. I spend a lot of times watching pro games and I have the willingness to learn, so I'm always curious as to what they're doing and what little micro or macro things that changes that they make and these little things that they do that can actually make a difference. So I'm trying to analyze every little bit of detail I can. And remember, you don't need 8,000 MMR to learn from the pros. All you need is the willingness to learn and a little patience. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.